to die.
Forged in the fires of 2020, I graduated into a VTC master from my humble beginnings as just an above average player. I never thought I would get this far, this quickly, especially not just by watching Netflix and Hulu with a few dozen YouTube videos and Twitch live streams. But how did I do it? You see, I think hard work for hard work's sake is overrated. My fellow aiming peers tend to focus on nothing but their targets, nothing but their aim, and keeping their minds on a tight leash, refusing any distraction or temptation. Many people feel that the inner state of flow, you must first razor focus your mind on the task at hand, and then slowly be absorbed by it, thus entering a state of flow. This is definitely the way most will experience this state for the first time. Flow is much more than this, however. At the same time, what people call flow is really just a small part of an even greater frame of mind. Quantum Zen is a Zen-like state where you consciously relinquish control to the rest of your mind while you assume the role of the observer. I've gone into this before in my Quantum Zen video a while back, but my planned comprehensive deep dive of Quantum Zen was ultimately put on hold until I could actualize my theories through my own experiences. I did, but more on Quantum Zen later. Realistically speaking, there's no part of me that thinks I could have pushed through all of those long periods of compression with just me, my thoughts, and the endless sounds of Kovaak's clicks and pings. I'd go mad. I've long suspected that many would-be aim heroes have found their dreams thoroughly thrashed by the insidious she-wolf that is compression. Essentially, unlike periods of expansion where you seem to keep breaking and setting records over and over again, while in a state of compression, you're shoring up your worst performances. You see, no one is 100% consistent day to day or action to action, yet a pro's worst day would still always be miles above the casual gamer's single best moment in their entire casual gaming life. Put another way, the pro's compression floor always exceeds the casual's expansion potential. Naturally, there would be no path to skillful victory in this instance for the casual. This is why, although training during compression feels meaningless and disheartening, it is actually during these long periods of compression that the mortar of your skill is hardened for yet more still to come, built atop your efforts and future periods of expansion. Indeed, compression is the foundation that keeps your bad days in check and your aim more consistent from shot to shot no matter the stress of the situation. So being that compression is both extremely useful and also necessary to train through to continue skill growth, how do we make it more palpable to those without Shaolin monk-like willpower and patience? Well,
modern problems require modern solutions.
Captain Lastimosa once explained to a rifleman, to learn new skills, you need to be in the right state of mind. I mentioned before that you assume the role of the observer while in a state of Quantum Zen. During gameplay, this allows you to focus on awareness of things beyond the scope of your immediate senses as you observe whatever your third eye projects into your head, be it useful intel, like where likely enemies are or will appear at any given time, or just being engrossed in the very action before you without taking the helm. An arbiter would use this third eye projection to anticipate outcomes in the quantum void prior to them taking place in real time. Either way, you are still the captain of the vessel of your mind, but now you are so confident in battle and combat that you can assign your helmsman to the wheel while you walk the quarterdeck, wordlessly observing both the crew working in lockstep and the situation as it unfolds. This is not easy to do, but it is when panic sets in and you rush in to take responsibility that an uncertain situation becomes a clear defeat. This is because your own conscience becomes the constraint at that point. Nothing is worse than an overbearing leader who demands to micromanage everything for fear of being held responsible if anything goes wrong. Yet this is often how we manage our own minds, and it is to the detriment of ourselves as a whole. This isn't a video centered on philosophy, mind you. The reason I mention this is because there's an alternative that's better, and this mentality creates an unnecessary constraint on your own improvement. Allowing the different parts of your mind to operate independently through quantum coherence, bypassing your conscious awareness entirely, or only informing you as a courtesy call that the action is being performed, is the ascended state of mind known as Quantum Zen. During Kovaak's AIM training, entering this state allows me to be able to do whatever I want consciously, while subconscious parts of my mind happily train and improve as any muscle would. This is where having a second monitor for videos and movies comes in. Quantum Zen does not come naturally like flow, and not everyone has even experienced flow before. The greater the stress the situation applies to your mind, the harder it is to maintain Quantum Zen. Yet another reason why compression is so important for consistency in high-stress situations. Watching videos on a second monitor while you train accomplishes two things. First, it makes training an hour or longer much more tolerable from day to day, as you don't have to consciously focus on the repetition required to improve. Second, it helps with carrying over your aim skills to whatever game you want to play. Focusing 100% of your aim and nothing but your aim is unnatural in FPS games. The human mind cannot process information beyond 60 bits per second. Processing speech alone, a critical requirement for team communication, takes up to 39 bits of that. Multiple pros during interviews have stated that general game sense, teamwork, and coordination are all more important factors in winning tournaments than raw mechanical aim alone. These all take up precious bandwidth you may be used to dedicating entirely to aiming alone if you only practice on Kovaaks. Thus, practice how you play is an idiom that applies well here. Tying Kovaak's practice into in-game performance should be the most important factor for the vast majority of people interested in using Kovaaks, as we presumably all want to also be better at our favorite FPS games, unless that game is Kovaaks. Depending on which videos you watch, like a Twitch livestream, you can further simulate in-game scenarios by watching consciously others play those games while you train subconsciously. Bonus points if you're learning game sense and such from them as well. By limiting the amount of your brain's bandwidth you're used to applying during practice, you can more easily incorporate your aim into games and avoid the common pitfall of improving greatly Kovaaks-wise, but not seeing those gains when you play your game. And I gotta be honest here, that was actually easier to explain than I thought it would be. A concern here for some of you might be that you wouldn't be getting as much value out of training this way as you would if you razor focused on aiming during that same stretch of training time. On one hand, I think for things like VTC benchmark grinding, if your sole goal is just to reach the next Voltaic rank and nothing else, you could accomplish this in less time without conscious distraction. On the other hand, most people, including myself, lack the willpower for this sort of monotony after a certain point, whereas by watching videos, I can often train for even longer than originally intended as I become so engrossed in whatever show I'm watching. And they were on some stuff for seasons 14 and 15 of American Dad. I'm just saying, it's obvious. Obvious. Because I'm using Kovaaks to take those skills into present and future shooters that required me to focus on a whole lot more than just my aim anyway, I don't see the extra time it takes to hit the next VTC benchmark as an opportunity cost, to say nothing of the value of the additional entertainment you get while training. What I know for sure, however, is training this way does not lower the skilling of your potential. Yeah, I didn't mean to make that pun, but I'm gonna keep it in here. Every high score I've gotten so far that's put me in the same league as big names in the AIM game, like Shroud, Raelix, Aimer7, Croder, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one, has all been while consciously distracted by a video. But now for the elephant in the room. How exactly do you train on Kovaaks with one monitor while watching videos on the other? And does it look something like this? It's complicated, really. Ideally, your second video watching monitor is near your primary one, or at least in your peripheral view. While your eyes focus on the primary screen as you train, your conscious is focused on the video in your peripheral view and what's happening sound-wise. Until you get into the more eye-candy oriented action scenes, this is largely all you need to enjoy the video content. You can flick your eyes over at any given moment for added context, and this too translates well into in-game activities that require you to look away from your aiming crosshairs for a moment, like looking at the minimap. The more dialogue-focused the show or movie, the better, though nothing's stopping you from taking a break to fully enjoy an action scene to your heart's content. Since I can still see my second monitor fairly well out of my peripheral, I actually like to train as my eyes just occasionally flick to the more rudimentary fight scenes. It becomes sort of an impromptu crunch session, if you will, with all the action sounds and music going on, and it's really intense. I think the biggest obstacle for most people who would benefit from aim training is the fear of wasting your time with boring repetition and getting no value out of it. Even without a second monitor, there are options still available to you. Naturally, you have music, but you also have podcasts and ebooks. You want to be consciously distracted and engrossed as much and for as long as possible. You aren't training the 5% conscious part of your brain, you're training the greater mind while keeping your conscious preoccupied and out of the way. Community is another great way to be more engaged in general. Once I started searching for new scenarios beyond the ones from Aimer7's OG aiming guide from like 50 years ago, I soon stumbled across a Discord group formerly known as Sparky, VTC, Voltaic. Not only is this Discord channel a sweaty mass congregation of gamers, aimers, pros, and coaches, there's an entire ecosystem of detailed information, guide, and even a ranking structure that will brutalize your feelings upon your first few attempts. In the VTC Discord, you can also watch videos and movies in the various channels or just socialize while you train. This in its own right might help with communicating and making callouts easier while gaming in the long run, but this is just speculation as I haven't tested it yet. Personally, the biggest community drive for me was earning the master ranks, and just seeing everyone else working towards the same goal helped dissipate any feelings that my struggles were isolated. For virtually anyone trying to use Kovaaks to improve their aim, I recommend at least checking VTC out to see what it's about. And I'll be sure to leave a link in the description box below, hopefully. I'll also be making an entire video dedicated to my daily aim routine in the future, where I'll focus more on the specifics of getting the most out of each scenario. In general, however, I found that stacking related scenarios, like the different passive scenarios in one session or day, helps you improve in all scenarios better than if you grouped up your days by alternating tracking, clicking, and switching. It's important to make the distinction that your overarching goal isn't to train your performance in the scenarios themselves, but rather to train the skills that enable you to succeed in those scenarios in the first place. These are the skills that you will carry beyond Kovaaks into your favorite games. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, and as always, I appreciate the support. This is Void Hunt, signing out.